Hi everybody, my name is Lisa Paulson. I teach in the Physical Education Teacher Preparation Program at the University of Minnesota Duluth. I'm really excited to share with you today my 7 interview tips and tricks for hopefully landing and being successful in the job that you are just applying and interviewing for. So let's get started. Hopefully you are close to or you have passed your licensure tests. Have completed or close to completing your teacher prep program, and now you sort of searched out the job that you want to apply for and got a call for an interview. So now what? Before we get into the tips, I would like to first say that you need to make sure that your resume and cover letter are where you want them to be. They're written in a way that they follow guidelines for what a cover letter and a resume should look like. There's a link in the presentation. UMD has a really great resource for help with guidelines for what you should follow and making sure that your resume looks polished and professional. And these are people, they would look at your resume and cover letter for free, and they are trained in these areas. So you absolutely should take advantage of this resource while you're a student at UMD. One thing I'll say about your resume is that you should be very intentional about the information that goes in there. You're applying for a teaching job, so that means the work that you should put in that resume, experiences that are with learning and teaching and kids. So have you volunteered at an event with kids? Have you participated in practical experiences in which you've had opportunities to teach? Have you worked at an after-school program? Have you worked in a childcare? All kinds of different things that are related to the work that you're applying for. So being strategic about what you put in your resume, I think, is really important. Cover letter, now that's your time to sort of expand on the information that was in your resume and sort of tell your story. So what's your background, and are you really proud of something that you put in your resume? There's your time to expand upon that and share why you're qualified for that job. All right, let's get into the 7 tips. So tell me why you want to work at our school. I just need a job. I heard there's an opening. Don't say that. All right, so I'm going to start with tip number 7, and then I'm going to work my way down to tip number 1. So tip number 7 is do your research. This one is fairly obvious, but definitely not one to be underestimated. Not only should you be able to say what that school's mission and vision are and how that relates to your answers, but Google search what has been happening with that school lately. Is there any recent news? Read the minutes from a recent school board meeting. That is super impressive. Other conversation pieces like, how are the sports teams doing? If you know how they're doing, that's pretty impressive that you have invested yourself into looking that information up and you are super interested about that school. And share, like, what do you like about that location? What if you lived there? What would you do? Ask questions that are related to research that you've already done about that school and that location. That shows that you are deeply interested in that job. Number 6 is be a human being. We are not perfect. We are teachers. We make mistakes like all humans do. And I think that an interviewer will so much more appreciate a candidate who is willing to be transparent and authentic about what they learned in teaching that lesson. No lesson has ever gone perfectly for me, and I don't know about anybody else who has taught a lesson that can say that there's nothing they would change about it. Showing that you are reflective and a continuous learner and sharing what you would change about that lesson next time, or perhaps what you did change if you had the opportunity to teach that lesson again, shows so much more than a candidate who just regurgitates textbook answers. That being said, still memorize your textbook answers, but now expand upon them in a way that shows transparency and reflective practice. Lastly, with this one, if you don't know the answer to a question, just say you don't know. Do not fake it till you make it. That never works. As somebody who's been on interview panels, there's nothing worse than a candidate who tries to fake their way through an answer. It is painful. Just say you don't know, but that you would be happy to learn more about that in maybe a professional development opportunity. Number 5 is give real life examples. Now, I know this sounds kind of silly because maybe you're a first year teacher or you are a first year teacher and you're like, well, I sort of kind of have student teaching experience, but that's about it. No, you have experience, and you have experience from other things that hopefully maybe you have more in your resume that you can draw on, like from practical experience or other times. Even if you taught a lesson to your peers, what would you have done differently next time? Okay. But especially from your student teaching experience or other experiences that you have working and teaching kids. Think about things ahead of time. Think about stories ahead of time and say those stories out loud to a friend or a family member. Thinking about things like times that you had a kid who wasn't participating in your lesson. What did you do? Share the story. What did you do when you had a kiddo who maybe had a different disability that you didn't really think ahead for, and you didn't differentiate for that, and your lesson wasn't very inclusive? You made the change on the fly, had to think on your toes, and now that lesson was made in a way so that all students could be successful. Share real life examples because that is something that no other candidate is going to share that same story. That experience is unique to you, and I think that there is something to be said about supporting your textbook answers with real life examples and real life stories from your experience. Number 4 is set yourself apart. So you don't know how many other candidates are applying for this job, and how are you going to stand out? So one thing that our candidates do in the PE program is they create iMovies of their teachings and voiceover, sort of like what went well about the lesson, what would they change, the most important things they learned about the lesson. So now here to your administrator or potential administrator, here's a video of evidence of my teaching skills and strategies of becoming a better teacher. Maybe you make a Shutterfly book and you put in photographs of people or of times that you have taught lessons and different ways that you have assessed students. That book that you make will sit on that table all day long. How many other people are going to do that? And by the way, there's a little asterisk here. Make sure that you have permission for videoing and recording your students ahead of time. You don't want to get into a sticky situation like that. Professional ethics and codes and all those things are something to be very well aware of. But also, write a personalized thank you card to the panel, and maybe multiple, if depending on who is on your panel and the size of your district. But there's something to be said about a handwritten thank you card that is personalized to that person or people and what you enjoyed about that experience interviewing and that you look forward to hearing from them. Maybe something specific about the interview that stood out to you and why you're excited about the opportunity. That goes a long way. Number 3, this one is really big. Prepare and practice. I strongly urge you to click on those 30 sample interview questions. I've taken the time to really think about what would be good questions to prepare for your interview. All are questions that I have asked or been asked along the way, and have found success in preparing for all of them. Might you be asked all 30? Probably not. Pretty much guaranteed you won't be asked all 30 of these questions, but preparing for all 30 not only will help you prepare for just wherever the conversation is going to go, but it will help you become more fluent in the academic language of your profession. I think that there is also something to be said about practicing aloud and doing sort of a mock interview with a friend or with a family member, and then even consider recording that, because when you watch yourself on video, you learn a lot. Just like when you watch yourself on video when you teach, watch yourself on video when you're answering interview questions, and you will learn a lot about what you want to change and how what you said sort of comes across. Little note here as well is be sure to clean up that social media account. Social media, side note, can be awesome, awesome, awesome if used appropriately in the realm of your profession. But don't think that someone is not going to look you up beforehand, because they absolutely will, and you don't want that to be one reason that you don't get the job. So number 2 is a little bit interesting, and it sounds silly because you think that you are coming in as a guest and you are sitting in that chair and they drive the conversation, right? But that's not necessarily the case. You are interviewing them just as they're interviewing you, and you sure can drive that conversation. They have a list of questions that they're probably going to ask you, but you decide where the discussion goes. Because so often we leave saying, oh, I wish I would have said that. I really wish they would have brought up blank because I'm so good at that. If you have something that you want to share, share it. And so they ask you a question. Now, I'm not saying don't answer the question. Be sure you answer their questions, but then you can expand upon those questions and your answers and drive them in a way to gear towards what it is, the thing that you really want to share, that you are really good at and you know is going to make you stand out. And that's another thing that really comes with practice, and then recording yourself. And so seeing how did you do gearing a question about differentiation towards something about classroom management that you felt you really wanted to share because you're really good at that. You have the ability to drive the conversation and share what you want to with that interviewer. Lastly, number 1 is show your passion. Passion is something that has to be genuine. You have to actually really, really love teaching and love kids and want to be in this profession for the right reasons, because you can't fake passion. But even being a first-year teacher, just because you don't have years and years of experience, if you show passion for teaching and learning, that school wants somebody who is truly passionate about teaching, truly excited to be in the classroom or teaching online, wherever we are. That is not to be underestimated. So really, really think ahead about your why. Why did you go into teaching? And share that with the administrator, share that with the panel, and demonstrate your passion for true teaching and learning, and that'll go a long way. So those are the 7 tips. I do want to just leave you with a few things that happen at the end of the interview. They'll usually say, so, what other questions do you have about the position? And first of all, never say you don't have any questions. There is always something to ask. You need to ask something. The other thing here is, don't be afraid to ask them intermittently during the interview. You don't have to save your questions until last. If they come up in conversation, not only does it put it into context, but it shows that you are present in the conversation, and it takes the pressure off at the end. So what should you ask? Here's 4 questions you can ask. You should and could ask many, many, many more questions. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what do you think will be most challenging for me in this position? Because many times that's an opportunity for administrators to say perhaps struggles that they've seen with other people why did the last person leave? What are some other things that maybe he or she or they haven't thought about in regard to what would be challenging or what is challenging for the person in this position? What's their favorite part about working at this school? Or what's their least favorite part? What does the ideal candidate look like to them? How do they support professional development? I have a little note here. I only put this in here because I've had former students ask me this question. Lisa, hey, I have an interview. What should I do? I have my interview tomorrow. Well, do I ask about the salary? No, you don't ask about the salary in the interview. If you get the job offer, that is the time to have that discussion. And, whether it is negotiable it depends on the position. Likely, a lot of first-year teaching positions might not be negotiable. but my personal opinion is I don't think the interview itself is the conversation time for a talk about salary. Wait until you get that job offer. And lastly, now you got the job, or you didn't get the job. That happens too. Move on to the next and keep on applying. But let's say you got the job. So now's your time to impress. Learn about your school. What policies and procedures are in place? What do you do for, is there a system-wide behavior management plan? Do they operate under responsive classroom, or what kinds of things are school-wide that you need to know and be aware of? Look at your curriculum, your annual plans, thinking about unit plans, lesson plans, and there forward. Introduce yourself to the people in your school, especially your secretary, cafeteria, and custodial staff. Those are key players in your school, and you want to be friends with those people. Ask your administrator how your performance is going to be evaluated. Create a substitute teacher handbook or Google Drive. Get your best lesson plans that you wrote for your methods classes, because those are the best lesson plans that you'll probably write in your entire life. And those are your substitute teacher plans, right? Take your good stuff and put it in there so you have a plan for when you are going to be gone if it is an emergency situation and you don't have time to write your plan ahead of time. You have something quality as a backup plan. Ask about professional opportunities, professional development opportunities, and or CEUs. Something that I don't know that is super talked about in your undergraduate is the fact that you need continuing education units, CEUs, in order to eventually whatever that word is, you need to renew, that's the word, you need to renew your license. And so the state of Minnesota, or whatever state that you end up teaching in, requires you to have a certain amount of CEUs in different areas, and those come from professional development opportunities. It's a good idea to get a handle of that right away, rather than scrambling and looking back to saying, oh, what have I done? Have a plan for that. Become familiar with your school emergency plans and systems in place, fire drills, lockdowns, all those different kinds of things. What do you do? What about the nurse? When do you need to see the nurse? What about students? Create a website and or letter for introducing yourself. Hi, I'm Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. I'm going to be teaching this. Parents and whoever guardians like to see those things. They want to know who their teacher is. Teachers spend more time with students than their parents or guardians do typically during the week. And so it's really important that you put yourself out there and introduce yourself to them. Identify students with special needs, help you make sure that you are meeting the needs of all kiddos in your classes. And are you going to have bus duty? Are you going to have recess duty? Do you have an opportunity to start an after-school program? What other additional duties do you have and need to be prepared to do? So I will leave you with this quote: to the world, you may be just a teacher, but to your students, you are a hero, because I know that everyone who has gone into the teaching career is probably a teacher because of some sort of teacher or mentor in their life who has made a difference. And so to your students, you truly, truly are a hero. And I think that that is a super cool opportunity that we have as educators. So thank you very much for watching, and I wish you luck on your jobs and your interviews.